Hi friends, welcome to PSC Collegiate English. Today let us look at yet another poem. This is a photograph of me by Margaret Atwood. Although this poem is very simple to read and understand, it has complex meanings and different levels of critical truths embedded within it. So the poem begins as if the speaker speaks about a photograph of her photograph, and later on we come to know the paradoxical truth that is hidden within this poem. So let us quickly get into the critical analysis of this poem. This is a photograph of me. Before beginning the poem, let us have a look at the background of the author and also what this poem or how critical this poem is. Margaret Atwood, she is a Canadian writer born in 1939. Margaret Atwood is best known as a novelist, as the author of the books such as Handmaid's Tale, Oryx and Crick. The poem, This is a Photograph of Me, opens the Circle Game, Atwood's 1964 collection of poetry. So, this particular poem is the introduction to this particular volume, the Circle Game. This poem, This is a Photograph of Me, is written in free verse. The poem begins as if describing a blurry photo to the audience. The image implications continuously transform. The poet uses this poem as a means of exploring the malleability of history and truth, especially suppression of marginalized voices. Now, this is the hidden fact that I was referring to. While discussing this poem, we have to look at not the direct or the implicit meaning that the poem is giving, but also we must try to go deeper into the different levels of meanings that Margaret Atwood has embedded in these poems. So, some of them are history, truth and marginalized voices. The poem sets stage for the circle game, which centers female perspectives and experiences that have long been subsumed under male-dominated histories. The form of the poem mirrors ever-changing nature of history. So just like it is said that history is written by the victors, so what about the losers? What happened to them? So what happened to those marginalized voices? When it comes to women, women are doubly marginalized. As Gayatri Spivak says, the concept of subaltern comes here. That is, a woman is dominated by male or male patriarchy. Woman is also dominated by the external forces. That is why woman becomes doubly marginalized. So, without any further ado, let's quickly get into the poem. It was taken some time ago. At first, it seems to be a smeared print, blurred lines and grey flecks blended with the paper. Then, as you can scan it, you see in the left-hand corner a thing that is like a branch, part of a tree, balsam or spruce emerging, and to the right, halfway up, what ought to be a gentle slope, a small frame house. In the backyard, there is a lake, and beyond that, some low hills. This photograph was taken the day after I drowned. I am in the lake, in the center of the picture, just under the surface. It is difficult to say where precisely, or to say how large or small I am. The effect of water on light is a distortion. But if you look long enough, eventually you will be able to see me. So that is the poem. That's a paradoxical poem, and the poet has written in a very satirical way. So this particular poem is taken from the collection The Circle Game. As I mentioned before, this is the very first poem which marks the starting point of this book, The Circle Game by Margaret Atwood. Coming to the summary of the poem, the speaker describes an old photograph from many years ago. Upon the first glance, the image appears blurry with all of its fuzzy shapes mingling on photo paper. The poet first points out a fragment of an evergreen tree. She is not sure if it is balsam or spruce, some evergreen tree that creeps into the frame from one of its left corners. Then the poet diverts the audience's attention to its right corner and says, to its right is an incline. And halfway up the incline is a little house whose weight is supported by a wooden frame. Then the poet says, background of the image is a lake behind which sits the short hills. The speaker claims in a parenthetical statement to have drowned the day before the photo was taken. Now here comes the paradox. Till now, this is the 15th line. In the 15th line only, Margaret Atwood reveals that she is the person who drowned the day before this photo was taken. So in the first 14 lines, the speaker or the poet is beautifully explaining the scenery of the photo. So once the audience starts to rejoice or starts to enjoy the view of the beauty or the nature, suddenly the poet says that I am the drowned person who drowned yesterday because the photo was taken the day after I drowned. Here comes the paradox. This particular line Margaret Atwood mentions in a parenthetical, that is within brackets. The speaker takes the reader's attention towards the center of the lake, where the speaker lies lifeless beneath its surface. The speaker explains it is hard to make out the corpse's form, its size and position. The speaker maintains that if the audience contemplates the photo for a while, they will be able to spot the speaker in the photo. Now that forms the plain, mere summary of the poem. Let us quickly get into the analysis of the poem. So before that, let us quickly look at the themes that are mentioned in the poem. So one of them is history and erasure. Please concentrate in this part. Initially, the photo has a blurred image, then various details. First the blurry image is shown. After that, the speaker takes audience's attention to various detail and quaint landscape of the photo. Halfway through the poem, the speaker's corpse is pictured. The narrative gets dark and complex. But the language used by the poet is soft. Soft language is used. Gentle slope, small frame house, low hills. Corpse is submerged within the lake denotes that speaker's experience has been obscured. One could figure out the corpse only after immense observation. That means that complicated realities of the past are harder to discern. Then there is a point about reflection of light of the lake. A distortion denotes that suffering of marginalized people can be easily left out. Speaker's form is at the center of the photo, just under the lake surface. This particular point denotes that such obscured stories are central to understanding of the past and can be accessed. Here, please look at the double meaning that Margaret Atwood is trying to convey. If you just look at the plainly, if you look at the meaning of the poem, it is that the author died and her body is somewhere in the center of the lake, just below the surface, because it is just one day old. If the body was if the body had decayed and it has blotted, it would just come up on the surface. So it has not come up. That means it is under the surface. So just try to relate it to history. So if we see the first point that Margaret Atwood wants to convey is complicated realities of the past are harder to discern than in the present. So one has to dig up the past to find out the realities. The second point from the point of history is marginalized people can be easily left out. Nobody cares. The third point relating to history and to this poem is that some obscured stories or the stories of marginalized people are central to the understanding of the past, and if somebody tries, it can be accessed. Just like Margaret Atwood said, if you try to look closely into that picture, you can find my corpse. Just like that, if one tries to access the stories of the marginalized people or the people whose voices were submerged, the truth can be found out. Okay, that was one theme, that is history and erasure. Coming to the second theme, very important, the subjectivity of truth. Throughout the poem, the speaker provides commentary on the photo and calls attention to particular details, shifting readers' understanding of what the photo represents. One's concept of truth is based on perception. Truth is unfixed and can be easily manipulated. That is what. Truth is not fixed. There are so many truth. The victor might be as I mentioned, history is written by the victors. Victors might be saying some story. The people who were defeated might be saying some other story. Some people whose narrative was not recorded, they might have some other truth. That is why truth is not fixed. Truth varies from person to person. So if you take this poem, initially there is a picture, there is a beautiful landscape. The speaker, the poet herself shows us to the left you see, to the right you see, to the center you see, and then she informs that she is the person who died. So in that way, it is the poet who is taking our attention from one detail to the other. That means she is taking our interest or our attention from one truth to the other. So the theme is subjectivity of truth. Truth varies from person to person. Truth is subjective. Okay. Coming to the history of how this poem came to be written. Atwood's "This is a Photograph of Me" is based on a shocking story of a drowned child. As the title suggests, the collection revolves around children's circle game. So the child might have drowned while she was playing, and the people might not have noticed. That is why she happened to die, unfortunately. So it is from this particular incident that Atwood has taken the inspiration and written this poem. The tone of the poem reveals many tensions and dualities. There is yet another point that we must try to understand. The photograph that Margaret Atwood is mentioning in the poem might be the poem itself. The poem itself is the photograph that the poet wants to show. In literary genre, there is this term called scansion. Now, scansion is the jargon for analyzing poetic meter. The poet wishes the audience to scan the poem. Just like in the poem, she is directing, look to the right, look to the left, look to the center. Just like that, just like viewing a picture, Margaret Atwood wants the audience to look at the poem and try to understand its deeper level meanings. Coming to the form of the poem has 26 lines. The first 14 lines describe the photo, the landscape. And in the remaining 12 lines, the poet depicts poet's intention in writing the poem. So that is it for now. Hope you enjoyed this. If you want me to any suggestions, or if you want me to take any other genre or poetry or criticism or anything, please do comment in the comment box. Thank you so much.